my great-grandparents came in the 1880s from Germany, so I mean, we all came from somewhere, so we shouldn't be absolutely opposed to it. And also you have to go to, you have to, we don't have a large Hispanic voting bloc, but Republicans have gotten in a problem by vilifying the Hispanic vote, and they're getting almost zero of it now. So we have to find a way to believe in the rule of law, believe in border control, but at the same time, people who come, or some that are here. But I'm not for granting them amnesty either. Can you send 17 million back? I don't know how you do that possibly. You know, but the first thing you have to do is secure the border against unlimited immigration.
Do you oppose the release of Gazebo detainees on American soil?
Of what?
Gazebo detainees being released on American soil?
Yeah, and that's a tough one. I don't know what you do with them. I think they should be mostly sent back to their country of origin. Or, to tell you the truth, I'd drop them back off in the battle. If you're not gonna convict them, and you can't convict them, and you're unclear, drop them off back in Afghanistan. It take them a while to get back over here, but you drop them off here in the country, I think that's a problem. It's complicated though. I read something the other day of 779 people at Gitmo, 90% were captured by foreign fighters, not by us. So some of them are turned in. You know, Afghanistan's been rival warlords for hundreds of years. One guy was a governor and was under Karzai, and he was a fan of the U.S. He's now in Gitmo. He's been there for a couple of years, but he was turned in by a rival clan who said he was corrupt and working for the Taliban. But I don't know. What do you believe? You know, it's sort of, so I don't know what you do. I don't know exactly what you do. I'm not really for bringing them back here. And some of them are bad people. I think dropping them back off. A lot of countries don't want them. Most of the countries don't want them, but they were found in Afghanistan, drop them off there. We also found them in a lot of different places, and there have been people arrested willy-nilly around the world who had nothing to do with terrorism and could prove that they had nothing to do with terrorism or were scooped up. So that's why you really have to have an orderly process. That's why in our country, at the very least for you and I, we need to have a Bill of Rights that we obey for all of us. Then there's some question about people captured on the battlefield, what you do.
The media reported that Missouri Information Analysis Center sent out a memo to the state police. In that memo, they described people, Ron Paul supporters,
pro-life people, Ron Paul supporters, gun supporters,
Libertarian Party, gun supporters, people that had strong feelings toward the Constitution, constitutional law.
That's scary. You got people out there talking about the Constitution. They're scary. You better start looking for those.
You know, the Missouri Information Analysis Center is directed by the Department of Homeland Security. They've got 30 states, and they've got 70 offices in 30 states and cities. Okay, now, they report this on the media, and then shortly after that, the Department of Homeland Security issues a blanket policy about similar things, that they're looking at people that are veterans. And these people here, they're
military veterans, soldiers who have come home from war. They might potentially be domestic terrorists.
Okay, I mean, I'm almost every one of those, okay, myself. Okay, and then I watch my local news, very good, about the Department of Homeland Security training police officers in a city how to bust down doors, and they've all got their SWAT team uniforms with their helmets that conceal their identity. Okay, now that's very convenient for somebody that's doing something that is illegal according to our Constitution to not have their faces recognized.
Now, there was a law many years ago, I think it was in the 19th century, the Posse Comitatus law, which means that the Army's not supposed to be used against domestic citizens. Now, do we have to have somebody who has the threat of force? That's your local police, and they have to obey the Constitution. Do we need some federal agencies superseding state agencies and your local sheriff coming in and busting doors down? No. And the thing is some people say, oh, you're exaggerating this. No, it can happen, so we have to restrict. It's kind of like, I had this discussion with my mayor, and she's a patient of mine. I like her in Bowling Green, but she's a liberal. But she said she voted against, we restricted eminent domain. A friend of mine introduced this to city council. We won 3-2, and we said something really dramatic. We said eminent domain should only be used for public projects, you know, roads, utilities, and she voted no on that. She said, well, no, yeah, I won't take the bring this American. I said, it's not important to that. The rules are for the next person who might be. You have to do something because you want to be elected. You have to restrain all elected officials. It's crazy. We have to do something about
Jefferson, Madison, I mean, they all warned me to be distrustful of government. That government by nature grows, but by nature becomes more corrupt, by nature becomes more oppressive. And things that I was talking to people about 2 years ago, they thought I was paranoid and crazy. Now they're calling me up and saying, I want to know some more, you know, about what's going on. I mean, people are beginning to pay attention, but we have federal law, and the Constitution was strictly designed to limit federal law over the states. And we have, you know what's going on. I'm very well aware that you do. But what can you do in their position to stop it? What can we do to
I think
help?
there are a lot of things you can do to stop it. You may not be able to get it through as one vote, and the Republican Party is a minority, and I think a minority within a minority at that point. But a senator has a lot of clout. A senator's a national big. That's a big deal. I mean, I tell people, if I were to do something like this is huge. You think my dad's been able to do for 30 years, believing in the freedom movement. Can you imagine if you had a U.S. senator, what you could do? So there are a lot of things you can do, and it's exposing it, talking about it, and letting people know. And there's a lot of friends now. I mean, Glenn Beck wasn't with us at first, and he's coming with us. He's talking about these things that are happening too. And there are a lot of people. Glenn Beck's the rising star on Fox right now. His program's going up faster than just about anybody's on Fox. And he's concerned about what government's doing. You mentioned our founding fathers. My favorite quote always is the Franklin quote. If you trade your liberty for security, you'll have neither. And that's important. You can be completely safe. I can make you completely safe from all murderers by locking you in your house and not letting you out. But would you want that? There's certain risks, and we have to have certain freedoms, but we embrace certain things to have our freedoms, and that's some of imperfection of security. So, but you have to have freedom. But I think a senator could do a lot.
I wish you the best of luck.
In regards to foreign policy, we're told a lot by mainstream conservatives that one of the reasons we're, stationed in so many countries around the world is to protect our freedoms and to possibly free those people from their dictators. And I was wondering, do you agree with that? And if not, what's your personal view on that?
There's a wonderful quote from John Quincy Adams that I like, and it said, "America does not go abroad in search of monsters to destroy. She's the champion of the liberty and freedom of all, but she cannot be the defender for the entire world except through the shining light and example." That's sort of paraphrased. But the other reason we can't do it any longer is we don't have the money. We're bankrupt. So my dad, you wish to say, and I agree with this, there are two reasons. One, sometimes you get unintended consequences. You think you're choosing the good guy. For example, you know who two of our biggest allies in the 1980s were? Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden. Most Americans don't realize that because they get confused. They think they're the same person anyway. They don't know much about it. But during the 1980s, we supported bin Laden. We gave him Stinger missiles to fight against the Russians. So we chose what we thought were the lesser of two evils. The State Department's committed policy in the 1980s and 90s was to radicalize jihad, to support radical jihad, because they saw this sectarianism along Russia's border with a large Muslim population as a way to combat Russia. And so we actually got it started. We did the same with Hussein. When Iraq and Iran fought, we hated Iran worse. And so we get unintended consequences sometimes, and I think it's a real problem. What do we do, and where do we go from here? We can't afford to do it anymore is the big thing. We can't afford to be in all these countries. We have to think about how it's counterproductive. My job in the Republican primary, though, and this is where it gets kind of tricky, is that some people hear that and they say, "Oh, we didn't believe any response to terrorism." So you have to assure people in the Republican primary of what I do believe, and that is that the primary function of the U.S. government that is enumerated in the Constitution is the national defense. And I do believe in a strong national defense, and were I in charge of the budget, national defense might comprise a much larger percent than it does now, but the overall budget would be greatly smaller, because there's a lot of stuff the federal government shouldn't be doing at all. I mean, I'd eliminate the Department of Education. You'd have no federal spending on education. So you might have a larger percentage with defense, but with defense you have to decide, is all military spending defense, or is some of it wasteful? We were talking about the Grace Report yesterday at breakfast. 25 years ago they got the Grace Report. Peter Grace did this. He talked about waste. He had $500 hammers in the military. Kind of drifted off to the side, and we still have that waste, and nobody's really done much about it. So there's huge waste. You have to change your foreign policy, and I think quite a bit of that is bringing troops home to our country.